I've had a longing in me for a very long time for this desire for more spaciousness and for really resisting the constant drive, the always on mentality. And I feel like, and maybe for a lot of us who feel really overwhelmed or disempowered, like what can we do? Actually, I think the most important thing to do is to finally be with it, as in be with how we're feeling. You can't force your line. The wave's going to dictate that. It's going to set the tempo and the rhythm. And it's about how are you coming into a relationship with that moment by moment.
Welcome to The Ocean State of Mind, a podcast about the wisdom of the sea and what it can teach us right now. The Ocean State of Mind is a proud project of the Ocean Foundation. I'm your host, Damian Evans. I'm an educator and ocean lover who has spent a career teaching in and building communities that nurture the human potential that lies inside all of us. I've also spent much of my life playing in and exploring our oceans. Now I'm on a mission to uncover how the ocean and our own awareness, or mindfulness, can lead us to live happier, healthier, and more meaningful lives that are in concert with our ocean planet. You know, I began this project because the science and evidence is pointing to mindfulness as a novel and as yet untapped opportunity in our fight to save the oceans and our planet. However, in this time of coronavirus, where many of us are staying home and learning how to manage our lives and stress in new ways, let's begin by learning how the ocean and all of nature can help save us. In our first episode, we are fortunate to be talking with my friend Easkey Britton. Easkey's a big wave surfer from Ireland who's also a marine researcher. She's looking at the connections between human health and ocean health. In this episode, we'll talk about what Easkey's learning from the ocean and what she's doing, and you can too, to slow down, stop the always-on mentality, and be with the vulnerability you may be feeling right now. You know, for me, hearing these insights from a woman who can charge the big waves of Mulgamore in Ireland, and I mean waves bigger than a house, will be sure to provide you the wisdom to bring calm in an uncertain time. Here we go. So we have Easkey Britton on the line. She's calling in from the coast of Northern Ireland, where she's living off-grid. So Easkey, it's so good to see you. Maybe let's just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Great to see you. Yeah, I'm Easkey, and I grew up in the northwest of Ireland in Donegal. Currently living off-grid, my partner's farm by the coast, which it seems kind of pretty timely at the moment. And yeah, I grew up surfing. My parents are surfers, and I've always had that close connection with the sea, which has influenced pretty much everything I've done in my life since. And right now I'm feeling that connection is really supportive. We're going through this very strange time. But yeah, so there's lots of things I can dive into, and obviously a lot more I can say about myself. So let's see where we can take it.
Sure. You have an interesting resume of sorts, both as a marine scientist or researcher looking at tying ocean health and human health. And you also are a longtime surfer. I think perhaps the first woman to be nominated for a XXL Big Wave Award, if I have that correct. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how those two worlds blend together.
Oh, great question. Yeah, they definitely do. Sometimes, not always. Yeah, so with the big wave surfing, I was nominated the first Irish woman, possibly European, though I'm not entirely sure, for a big wave award. I think 2011 was the first time, and a few times after that. So where I live and learn to surf, it sort of has one of the more famous big wave spots probably now in the world, but certainly in Ireland, in my backyard, about half an hour away from the house, called Mulgamore. I think being a big wave surfing in Ireland is probably just really been around the last 10, 15 years. 2007, I think, is kind of the year that marked it really kicking off with the likes of Mickey Smith coming and pioneering waves at the Cliffs of Moher at Aileen's. And prior to that, some of the local surfer Richie Fitzgerald and his pal Gabe Davies starting to tow in at spots like Mullaghmore. So it was those early days of big wave surfing, I think, in the world. It was just kind of expanding the edges of what we thought was possible of our human potential to ride waves of that size, waves of consequence. In Ireland, it was also like, how do you even access some of those spots? So with something like the jet ski, although there's controversy surrounding it since, it still remains a really important, I suppose, water safety craft, but also was a game changer in opening up this whole other world of surfing in Ireland in particular, and has since supported some incredible talent in big wave surfing. And I just think Ireland lends itself really well to that kind of energy in the ocean, and the draw or pull to want to tap into that has always been so present for me. It's just so elemental. It's certainly somewhere, perhaps because we're an island in the edge of the Atlantic, that we get such a range of weather, and we're dealing with this constant state of change day by day, hour by hour, 4 seasons in one day, or 1 hour sometimes. So they're the kind of shaping forces in my life, and with surfing, and that kind of intensity to it, I suppose. And perhaps then I was drawn, I mean, that's such a full body experience, but I was also, because of my immersion in the sea, really drawn to wanting to better understand it, for one. And then traveling a lot as a surfer, being exposed to different environments, but also the changes a lot of these ecosystems are undergoing. And I think as surfers, we're really at the front line of that, because we're immersed in it. We're also so it's not even just like an awareness, it's like we're directly impacted by changes that happen in the ocean, will directly affect us. And I think there's that separation for most people, but because of the land sea kind of dichotomy or separation, whereas we all have this image in society of the sea as something out there a lot of the time, even though it's something that's radically shaped societies over millennia.
Right.
In terms of our movement, how we transport, where we source our food, that all of that connection to water is so innate in our culture around the world. But yet there is this bizarre sense of separation, and even in somewhere like Ireland too, where the sea culturally is also a place to be feared, and is a place of loss and tragedy. So there's all of that, and then something, I suppose, that, as you can tell from my rambling conversation, it was just that curiosity to better understand the human relationship with the sea, and how can we better understand it, and also maybe how can we recover the parts of it that we've lost, that disconnect. So it was two parts. It was wanting to better understand the ocean in terms of the ocean's health and the changes that were happening there in terms of our impact on it and how to protect it. And then the other was a better understanding, actually, well, what are the consequences of that for us, and how do we, I suppose, that reconnection, if we could reconnect with it, learn to love it again, would that also help the ocean be healthier too? So that's kind of where I came at it from the marine science point of view.
Right. Thank you. No, there's so many nuggets in there. I mean, just following the curiosity, and also looking at how do we reconnect, the separateness of human and sea. And I wonder, you mentioned when we were chatting online that you've just wrapped up a manuscript, and I wonder if you might take what you were just saying and talk a little bit about what that manuscript or book is going to be about.
Yeah, so the book, well, I have to get used to saying that out loud in public. The book that I'm writing, or have written, just submitted the final manuscript this week, actually, to Mercier Press.
Congratulations.
Still up in the air when it's going to be published, because everything is in this weird pause. Right. Suspended at the moment.
Right.
But it's there, and for me, I think a lot of the process of wanting to do it was the writing of it, and it's called Saltwater in the Blood. So it explores very much what I've been talking about. What is that human relationship with the sea, drawing very much on my own personal experience, my life story, but also then connecting that in a more universal sense of like, why water? Why is it that I feel this way? Is that, particular to me, or is it something actually that's more universal in people and humans? And then kind of also through surfing as that kind of lens to explore different ways of creating that connection in a positive way with different people across cultures, and that also draws a lot on my experiences, and just playing a lot on, I suppose, those kind of powerful active metaphors around those moments of encounter with something that's more powerful than us, like the sea. So basically, yeah, what the sea can teach us about who we are, and in particular about that, how do we, when I talk about connection, I mean also that sort of self-connection, a feeling of presence. And how does it facilitate that? How does it, I suppose, retracing those kind of peak moments of what I call those moments of encounter, when I was faced with like the, you know, real fear, those
Mm-hmm.
kind of visceral moments, and also those moments where you're in that kind of state of flow and presence. So all the sort of the ebb and flow of it all, and how what the ocean has been teaching me as I've been living my life. And then also then it's not a sciencey book by any means. It's far more philosophical, if anything. But I do kind of make the link then with the research I've been doing, which is very much around building on Wallace J. Nichols' Blue Mind, of the effect of being in, on, or near water. And so what happens to us when we cross that threshold from land into sea? In particular, what is it about the sea, both physically, but also psychologically, emotionally? So I'm really interested, I suppose, in that capacity to be transformed by changing up our environment, and what is it about water.
What is it about water? I mean, you say something. There's a beautiful phrase there of moments of encounter, right? And
Mm,
we're, with coronavirus, certainly all of us on this planet are encountering a moment, unlike any others. And I wonder, without giving up all the nuggets of your book, there's so much uncertainty right now,
mm-hmm.
and fear. And I imagine, as someone like myself also spent a lot of time in the ocean, it's taught many of us around embracing fear, embracing uncertainty, and perhaps you can speak on that.
Yeah, I find it, the universe, sometimes pretty funny. It's sort of ironic that, I mean, I wrote most of the book last year, and then we'd just be going through the editing process and wrapping that up this last couple of months. So I kind of, yeah, it's because there's a lot in it around facing how we face uncertainty, and this whole notion of letting go, surrender, which we've all collectively kind of been forced into having to experience directly and learn right now, not just conceptually, what those, or intellectually what those words mean, but how do we actually let go of the things we were so used to doing and having, or had taken for granted. And that whole process of surrender, which is such a huge word, which I think is a lot to do with uncertainty, and why the ocean can be such a good teacher in that respect, because it's such an unpredictable environment, as you know, because it's constantly changing. And yeah, for me in my life, I realized that's been such a powerful lesson to learn. And when I talk about, I suppose, letting go and surrender, it's maybe not immediately obvious, but I think particularly in big wave surfing, that's a huge part of it. Like, it isn't about going out and slaying the dragon, conquering these big waves. That's not at all what, at least my experience, that's not at all what happens. And I know a lot of others would back this up, who surf bigger waves, or any wave really. But it's, in order to sort of catch a wave and ride it and be present to that, and be in that kind of, the moment when it all flows, when it all aligns, only happens when you actually let go any agenda, any real like desire, or to control the outcome, or to, I'm going to get barreled on this way, or
Right.
whatever it is, because you can't force your line. The wave's going to dictate that. It's going to set the tempo and the rhythm, and it's about um, how are you coming into relationship with that moment by moment. And so you really have to let go all of your own expectations in a way, which is super interesting in a society where we're really geared towards like be the ones being in control, right? And now we're waking up to the reality that actually that's just not the case.
Right.
Um, Yeah, and so that surrender is really actually, it's a really powerful, I would see it as quite a powerful force rather than this, even, and it's like this in those moments that seem really like, you're facing, with this huge wave. It's intimidating. There's a lot of fear, but when you're in the place of surrender, it's actually kind of like a softening into, if you have this oncoming wave coming at you, like what we experienced that time when we were all body surfing, and you
Right.
meet it with like resistance, or like, oh, I'm gonna, stand my ground. The ocean is a wonderful way of just like going, no, just teaching you that humility by completely swiping you off your feet, and whereas if you soften even your body and relax into it, even though it goes against maybe the instinct to sort of fight, or fight it, or flee from it, it's so incredible because you're tapping into the energy of it. Then you're carried with it rather than being pushed against it.
Mm.
um,
I,
that might have been very philosophical, but that's where I'm at right now.
that's where a lot of us are have to be right now. I wonder if, you, like many of us, have had to really surrender what we thought we were going to be doing. You just spent
Yeah.
maybe the past year plus, writing a book, and now who knows? Publishing houses are trying to figure out what to do with their staff. You're
Mhm.
you're now up on the northern coast in Ireland. What are some ways you or your partner are just finding to surrender, to make it through these days? What are some tips and tricks for all of us who
Mhm.
are isolated and sequestered in our own ways, and trying to figure out how to recalculate what to do, how to be?
Yeah. I'm not sure I have the answers for that, except I can just speak to where I'm at right now. And it's funny with this. I've had a longing in me for a very long time for this desire for more spaciousness, and really resisting the constant drive, the always on mentality, the hyper like productivity that's demanded in academia, working at the university. And it was becoming quite worrying, and increasing cases of burnout. And although I research like environment and human health, seeing in my colleagues loads of examples of illness and disease caused by, say, stress, quite frankly. um, so I'm like, whoa, hang on a minute, something is really out of alignment here. So although this is such a shocking wake-up call, and that it has to come to this, um, it's so interesting. I actually feel I don't feel called at all to take action right now. I'm not in that place at the moment, and I feel like, and maybe for a lot of us who feel really overwhelmed or disempowered, like what can we do? Actually, I think the most important thing to do is to finally be with it, as
Mm-hmm.
in be with how we're feeling, even if it's shitty, and noticing the feelings in my body, like just even, having, it's a time of, it's funny, I wrote this article at the start of the year for Finisterre called In Deep Water, and it was sort of reflection on the year before, and what my kind of intention or desire was for the year ahead. um, and in it I sort of talked about this feeling, this pull to just listen, to embrace this sort of deep form of listening before kind of moving on to the next big thing. Um, and so I feel like now is the perfect time for that. And so nearly everyone I speak to will always bring up, I mean, Ireland, we're great. We always talk about the weather anyway, but now it's all about the bird song wherever you are. It's like noticing the birds, but things like that are really important. So yeah, and I've been noticing the resistance in myself too, where I'm still working remotely with the university, but I just don't feel the same drive to like get things done in the way I did before, and I'm just allowing myself to be okay with that. Um, I think what's being called of me right now is to really embrace this energy shift that's really needed in order to first heal. There's so much healing I think that's going to be needed. And the best way to heal is also just to stop, slow down, and rest. Um,
Mm.
so I think, with where I'm at right now, it's like, okay, that's I'm just staying with that. So how can I stay self-connected when I'm feeling pulled in different directions. Um, what does it look like for me to have more rest in my day, in my life? And then obviously in order to stay grounded, it's going back to just really simple practices that I let slide around gratitude, for example. I know it sounds so basic, but really just taking that time to appreciate those moments, all those spaces in between that if we're in a rush, we tend not to notice or take time to appreciate. um and just allowing for even those, it's a real ebb and flow on the daily, where I find my mood is like, it's, I'm in a real good place. I'm like, I've got this. We're living off grid. There's like all these things you can do. We can get growing and gardening, and I have all these plans and ideas. And then, like, a moment later, it's like, I just no, end up feeling really low. Or so it's almost just like giving ourselves permission to just ride that out, just be with that ebb and flow. For me, that I'm finding like that's I'm not in a place to sort of vision my way out of this, or to learn a new language, or maybe all of that will come. I know that's it's very rich coming from someone who says they've just written a book, but to be honest, the book was something for me that was a real passion project that I could kind of like retreat away into. That was something of my own. So it was actually more of that's probably what I'm longing for as well, that more creative energy that's really authentic. And I think the resistance or resentment I feel probably comes from right now it feeling really clear when I'm doing something that's just not in alignment anymore with what it is that I value most. So I feel like there's definitely this kind of stripping away happening. Interestingly, I feel I also have felt that when I'm surfing in those more extreme conditions. Yeah. So don't even answer that question, but I often think it's just be really gentle and be with where you're at right now, and don't feel the need to, you don't have to make yourself a better human. You're good just as you are right now.
Right. Well, embrace the energy shift that is needed, and with gratitude. That's what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah.
What a lovely phrase. Well, I have a lot of gratitude for you for sharing some time, and maybe this moment we can shift a little bit and
Mm.
um, almost turn the chairs on each other, so I can share a little bit about Ocean State of Mind, and would love
Yeah.
to just brainstorm, or what did we say, interstorm, brain view,
Yeah. Sure.
in our time left. And I don't know the easiest way, so I'll just sort of jump in. We've shared a little bit about this, but I've been framing this project, Ocean State of Mind, as a way to put mindfulness to work for ocean conservation, if you will. It got accepted as part of the Ocean Foundation, and that's a nonprofit based in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Supports almost 100 projects around the world that are all focused on ocean conservation. And I've been both training for the last couple of years as a mindfulness teacher out of the Mindfulness Center at Brown University School of Public Health, and looking at a ton of the research around outcomes related to mindfulness practice. And there's quite a bit around health and lowering of blood pressure, increasing overall sense of well-being. And then there's some researchers, including a woman, Christine Wainsler, who has been aggregating the research around mindfulness in the environment. And what appears to be rising out of it is some very compelling indicators that mindfulness practice can increase our sort of positive ecological behaviors, or taking care of the earth, potentially even funding more for environmental sustainability projects, but that it's not widespread. There's quite a few gaps, and there's a lot more science and work to be done. And I've been developing this for the last year or so, and now with the pandemic, I realize, and our conversation right now is really reinforcing my view that the ocean has a tremendous amount to teach us all in this moment. The ocean and nature, right? There's quite a few people that live near the coastline, maybe something like
Mm-hmm.
40%, but there are a lot of folks that don't. And so thinking about how our pale blue dot in this universe can really support and bring health to humans in stress is how I'm starting to think about it now. And so I'm going to be spending the next year anyways talking with lots of folks like yourself, Easkey, who are already making those tight connections between human health and ocean health or environmental health, as we start looking for really big opportunities in that space, to strengthen human nature connection, to increase our ecological behaviors, increase our conservation efforts. So that's sort of a brief synopsis, and would love to just chat for a little bit and see if you have any questions.
Wow. Yeah, it's so exciting. And it's really great to hear how this has come together and evolved and taken shape and grown since we last met. I just love it. And then I read the article you shared too. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And I looked a lot more into mindfulness in the context of how it was used around nature connection specifically, of which there is a bit more. But I was kind of, in a way, yeah, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't have been shocked, but I was, given that in my own practice, and you've experienced this as well, of working in this space at the, that between mindfulness and ocean conservation, uh, of just how powerful a combination that is, right? And then to sort of see that wasn't at all reflected in literature. There's this huge gap where the link isn't being made off, especially around sustainability, because it's about human actions and behaviors and values, and how we connect with ourselves and each other in society, and how we relate to our environment. And mindfulness is such a powerful, well, it's lots of different things, but it's also a powerful tool to help facilitate that, right? And even in my own experience, like, for example, and often the work that I do, it's almost like ocean is the byproduct. Or, for example, working with women in Iran with the Be Like Water program, and now I have Martina doing something really similar with Sea Sisters in Sri Lanka. The focus there very clearly initially is around women's relationship with their bodies, and how water can help build confidence and restore the ocean as a safe space. But it's kind of like creating just this, it's like the ocean is there to hold the women so that they feel, I suppose they can feel all of who they are again, and also reconnect with the ocean in a positive way. But it's not initially about any of the other things that come with it. But very quickly that comes, right? There's this different way, a total perspective shift in how they see the ocean. And it happens very rapidly. So even in Iran, where, okay, you're there and with the local community, their fishing background, ethnic Baluch, they've, very familiar with the beach, but they're surfing for the first time, and this young boy is learning how to surf, gets really stoked on it. That's in the morning. We go away in the midday sun because it's too hot, and then we come back that evening. I'll never forget it. He'd spent all day on the beach. God love him, he's kind of burnt to a crisp. He's probably not great for his health, but he's there, and he just had all these bags full of like the rubbish, the marine litter he picked up from the beach. He just stayed on the beach the whole day cleaning it. And I asked him, I didn't say anything about the marine litter problem, or I didn't point out any of that stuff. And I just asked him, wow, like what how come you did this? What motivated you to spend all day cleaning the beach? And he would basically, and the short of it was that, well, the ocean had just given him so much joy. Like, it was a place then he wanted to take care of. Like, you would keep your house clean, or as a sign of respect. And then culturally, that's a really big thing where he's from too. Especially as he saw it as his beach and he was welcoming us. It's like he wanted to have that there was a different, it was so amazing to see that take form in a really organic way, rather than kind of going in with all this sort of top-down instrumental approach and how to, roll out marine education, for example. That's just one kind of little offshoot to put it,
Yeah.
put it into context. But so what you're saying, I think, is huge potential, especially with the work I found too around this nature connection work. There's different cultural underpinnings for sure, but it's also a really universal language, that like connection to water. So it's a great starting point as well to sort of broaden the scope if you're working with different parts of the world, or so there's also that aspect. But I find the mindfulness part is just key. It's like that, even in how I was teaching surfing, it altered how people would learn surfing by doing it in a much more mindful way. And it's about the intention, isn't it? With anything we do, it gives us that moment of pause to
Yeah.
reflect on, whereas often a lot of the crap happens when it's a mindless action. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I found that moment, there's a lot of us have talked about the amazingness of a wave, and for folks that are playing on a wave or body surfing or just getting knocked over by a small wave or surfing, is you have this thing that's been traveling, from the sun basically and through into our weather pattern and then blowing across an ocean, and its last seconds of being in that energy form is when you're riding it, when you're playing on it. And I found bringing my mindfulness practice to that moment as a surfer when I'm about to stand up, and which often is sort of a non-doing, non-thinking. It's just being present in all the ways you might be present has really helped. Where often I'm not sure what I was doing, but I may not have been paying attention in the way that would have helped me not just wipe out.
Yeah, and what you're saying there, I guess mindfulness, people have different ways of interpreting it. But if you go back to, okay, it's like how paying attention in a particular way, just brings to mind, I'm trying to look for it now, this book I finished reading by Jenny Odell, How to Do Nothing, which is kind of misleading book title, but essentially what it is, resisting the attention economy. So she gets at what happens by, I suppose, when we don't have that autonomy anymore over our attention and how and where it gets directed. And that's something that's also pandemic with how we communicate information and consume news. I'm not going to, so I wasn't going to say fake news, but it's, we kind of are living in that time too, where there's such demands on our attention. And if you don't have those, that ability to practice something like mindfulness, it can be really harmful when you're not even aware of how your attention is being like siphoned off, by these different multinational corporations on these different platforms in the media and so on and so on. But it's quite powerful too. And so I think the work that you're talking about doing has a lot of huge potential. But when it comes to sustainability too, I think a lot of it is around this notion of attention too.
Yeah, what you pay attention to grows, you hear often. Do you have, one of the things I was thinking about, which in a way is sort of put on hold, because at least where I'm living, we have closed all parks, all beaches, all nature trails, which is a sad scenario in lots of ways, because nature is such a healing power for folks right now, particularly when you're stuck in an apartment or maybe don't have access to a yard. But I had been running small ocean retreats, basically, where we were just getting folks out to the water, doing some short, mindfulness meditation, which in many ways is sort of allowing us to do what nature does anyways. It you had mentioned that, the blue mind work of being in nature naturally just calms you down and allows you to experience what is there, just by its very nature of being nature. And now I'm realizing in the short term anyways, doing any sort of retreats may not be possible, but talking with and learning from people around the world that have been bringing the wisdom of nature, the wisdom of ocean to more people is an area that I can easily do, whether through this podcast or other ways of raising awareness. And I wonder, if are there other people that I should be thinking about talking to and learning from, that we can spread what their work looks like?
Yeah, in terms of like the connecting people with blue space and like the whole health and well-being benefit
Mm-hmm.
side of it, Damien? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And you mean specifically different like projects or programs that are doing in a way what you were also doing? But yeah, I was just thinking that because we work quite closely with one NGO, like surf therapy organization here in Ireland called Liquid Therapy. And they just got like a whole like lottery funding this year, and we're going to ramp up their program and take it countrywide. And they also have a program where the kids come, like the same group of kids have been coming year on year, so it's also like a real kind of club and community for them. I think, what are they going to do when they don't have that anymore, and also for the parents. So it's kids primarily with mental health disabilities and autism, and various other physical disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that work. And then there's the work of Martina, who was at Wavemakers the year before, in Sri Lanka with her Sea Sisters program.
Mm-hmm.
But at the moment it's like, I imagine a lot of those things are on hold. But what also is interesting in the marine research community space, we just published the SOFI kind of ocean human health kind of agenda. It's a research agenda for like the next decade, focused more on Europe, but I think it's really widely applicable. And they kind of honed in on 3 kind of priority areas, and one of them being this blue spaces and well-being. And another one being that kind of actually the marine biodiversity and biomedicine, biotech. So there's a friend and colleague of mine who used to work for WHO, and he's doing a lot in that kind of biotech, marine biotech space. But they're kind of pivoting at the moment, using his language, in response to this pandemic, like, okay, how can the marine research community respond to this? And one of a lot of the areas are looking at sort of innovations in the technology and medicine side of it. But also he got COVID-19 himself, and has recovered. So he kind of knows firsthand. But the impact, as you were saying, of already it was really a major issue of like loneliness in society and the mental health issues kind of skyrocketing. And in order for us to actually recover from something like this, a vaccine alone isn't going to be enough. And there's going to be huge demands and pressure already. There are, but in particular in mental health services, that I know in Ireland, the government they're just not looking at it, aside from putting out a bunch of phone numbers that my mum, who's a psychotherapist, said, you already need to be in a place where you're somewhat self-connected to like pick up the phone and talk. Yeah. It's the people who are really in need of the therapy and the support they will not pick up the phone. She has clients that she's still working with, and she will have to phone them, and when she does, they're just like so glad and grateful, like it's a lifeline for them, but they would never have phoned her.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people that are going to get lost in this, that aren't going to be taken care of. And then those of us who did have certain level of resilience, I think it's going to be seriously eroded by the end of it all. So there's 2 things. It's the importance, as you're saying now, of the storytelling, awareness raising, of getting this out there and pushing how important this is going to be in terms of restorative, how we tackle the crisis that's going to come around loneliness, the mental health issues, why this nature connection, blue space, ocean work is going to be even more important, I think, because of something like this pandemic. So I can share you, I'll share a link that Timmy sent out. It was a survey he was just doing to kind of scope levels of interest and who could contribute what this kind of call to action he had, and I don't know how it will evolve around mental health, mental health blue space narrative, but yeah, I think there's going to be something big happening there, and I don't know what. I think it's probably just going to be quite simply what you were saying, like how do you sort of amplify the work that's already being done to really strengthen the need and support for this work in how we sort of pick up the pieces when we get on the other side of this. As well as I'm thinking, as you're saying, what can we do now when people are being cut off? It started out like, oh great, we've all this time to go outside in nature,
right?
and then now it's like, oh shit, now we've so many people they don't even have that anymore. So what happens when you're in total confinement? Can you still connect? And so because I'm just still not in the space yet to even begin to really properly brainstorm how my mind is. I've just needed to come down and land first and settle, and it's taking a lot longer than I thought, which is okay. But I was toying with, for big wave surfing, we do a lot of visualization techniques, because you can only, Mulloch Moor, you might only surf it 5 times, a handful of times a season. That's a good season, actually. And so you don't get all that much time to familiarize yourself with the spot. And so you do a lot of like really embodied kind of visualizations, neuroimaging kind of stuff. That can be quite powerful. And I just wondered, is there, can there be as well as could you add some water to that kind of mindfulness practice with some visualization? I've done it before, where sometimes if I have at the start of a session, even in a conference, of the why water question and reconnecting with our early memories of water, for example, and almost like sort of like a very short, simple guided meditation or visualization to go back to our early water memories, or our favorite place in nature with water, for example, and that we can kind of keep going back and revisiting within ourselves, even if we can't go outside. So that's just one thing I was thinking of.
I love it.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the sort of aha moments I had when we were doing these small ocean retreats, and particularly with some communities that were like, a bit far away or disconnected or had barriers to getting to the ocean. Once we got down there, we realized, some of them didn't know how to swim or had a real fear, and a lot of the work was creating a safe space and scenario for them to enter the water. And I could imagine just hearing this notion of sort of embodied visualization, or even going back to our early memories of water, which for many people may not be a positive memory.
Well, this is true too. So when I used it in that context, it was interesting to see the mix, you're right, of people who had this real positive experience, and then the people who had the negative ones, and how that stayed with them.
But it's the type of thing that could be done as a precursor, almost as an on-ramp to the time that we can go back to water in groups, and maybe some of that work, that healing has already happened. That's really interesting.
That, and especially because at meditation you're already connecting with the breath, which is a way, again, to remind people of how they're connecting with the ocean, which I'm sure you do, but breathing in the oxygen, and so much of it comes from the ocean, and the ebb and flow of our breath, like the tide. And I think those things they're really simple, but definitely not to be underestimated right now, because I find myself definitely going back to those, the more simple the better, those kind of tools of practices I probably used to always do, but kind of let slide, because so it's almost that like going back to like the basics, and they're actually really great tools to have.
Absolutely, it is time to go back to the basics.
I guess is there 3 things then? It's like the storytelling part, the sort of the inner work of how we can keep the connection alive with water within ourselves through visualization, for example. And then the third one will be how do we prepare as a community around, say, broadly speaking, ocean therapy to, I think, have a more, I don't know, what is it that's needed? It's like, so that it's really shines a light on this need to address I think the terrible consequences for mental health that are going to come about very rapidly, that are going to overwhelm systems that already weren't coping with it. All the
Yeah.
focus is now on the virus, but it's going to have so many knock-on effects. And I think how we sort of, again, it's so that we don't miss the opportunity, right? So we don't just spring back into trying to do business as usual with how we interact with the world around us, and particularly the natural world. So it's both that instilling that kind of respect and mutuality and interdependence of how much nature can support us and our healing, and how vital it is that it's a healthy environment. Otherwise it isn't going to be able to support our recovery. Yeah.
It's really helpful to hear you repeat that back, because what you've said and where my mind has been settling is, yes, very much now on, the Ocean State of Mind project is on storytelling, like the raising awareness, the sharing of the wisdom.
Yeah.
Two, there is the inner work, right, of finding my own tools to reduce anxiety and stress, and maintain a connection to nature or water. And the third part is it's almost like preparing to turn the lights back on in a very big way.
Yeah.
When we can get back out and actually start activating the solutions that have been there, and ideally that people are much more ready to do, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
All of us in the world that are cooped up can suddenly say, the blue scription, right? Or the green scription, like,
Yeah.
I need
Yeah.
to get outside, and I need my government to support and fund that. And so
Yeah.
that third phase, which is, might be next year or sometime later next year, but what do we know works? What do we know has potential? And then how do we really fund and activate that stuff when it's time to go? Because we'll have folks that are truly, I think, ready to lean in ways that we never could have imagined otherwise.
Exactly. And I think the storytelling is in support of that. It's like, well, here's the case studies and the evidence, and and then the work I do, we're supposed to launch this sort of nature connection toolkit to connect communities with the outdoors in Ireland. And the timing, we were going to be launching it pretty much now, but it's been set back. But in a way, the timing will be perfect for there'll be such a need for it when we're starting to emerge from all of this. So it's really, as you said, turn the lights on, really spotlight it. And it's interesting too, because paralleling this is how obviously the environment is recovering in our absence. Which there's a tension there, right? For encouraging people to go out and be in nature. Well, it isn't, but then, I mean, therein lies the issue, isn't it? Where I keep coming back to, but the issue is always the separation of us and nature, the way we talk about it. So that, that's probably besides the point. But again, how do we, it's the quality of that relationship, probably where mindfulness comes in as well, of reconnecting in a way that's mutually beneficial. So Surfrider Foundation in Europe, I had a conversation with them this morning, and they're kind of working on this Europe-wide initiative around bathing water quality. So again, it's like the other side of the story. It's okay, like healthy people we need a healthy ocean.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're trying to put together this sort of manifesto as such for the European Commission to really advocate, okay, here's what's needed. So there's kind of, more real-time reporting on water quality, much more kind of citizen engagement. And so it's like, if we're really pushing, blue space in particular for mental health, then the other leverage is like demanding good bathing water quality. So it's great.
Wonderful. Well, I know we're close to time. This has been awesome to talk, Easkey, and the nature connection toolkit. It'd be interesting to think about what's the sort of coronavirus addendum, to be done in your
Oh
home.
yeah, we were gonna have to put in a end section, I think. Yeah, definitely. Oh, it's so good talking to you. It's definitely helped me tease out some of the thoughts that were obviously banging around in my skull that I didn't even realize. Thanks for that. I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited for what the work that you're doing. It's so needed, but it's really on point, Damien. Yeah.
I love it. Well, Easkey, thanks for spending time. And you and I are hopping on a call with our Wavemaker Collective in a
Yeah,
couple hours. So
that's right.
we'll continue
Great.
with that.
Brilliant. Listen, thanks so much. And I'll see you. Oh, you've got the Neruda book behind you.
I
Is that the
do.
book, the poem of all the sea poems?
It is On the Blue
Oh,
Shore
that's
of
my
Silence.
all-time favorite. Yes, I love it. I was reading
Um,
it the other night. I keep it beside my bed.
It's awesome. I have
Yeah.
another book here, which is my new favorite. I don't know if you've seen this one, Rising by Elizabeth Rush.
No. Oh.
She is a finalist for the Pulitzer. Just came out. She's actually based where I am in Rhode Island, and
Wow. Okay.
it's a beautiful poetic book. It's about basically the sea's edge and what's happening as water's encroaching with salt marshes and everything else. It's a really wonderful. It's one of those books
Oh,
that
wow.
I'm purposefully reading slow because I don't want it to end, so I try and
Oh,
hide it from
wow.
myself.
Yeah.
But it's
It's a
definitely
treat.
one to check out.
Ah, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna do that.
Awesome. Easkey, thanks again. And we'll talk soon.
Brilliant. Yeah, we will. Thanks a million. Bye.
Cheers.